Did you know that it takes an average of 10 to 15 years to develop a new drug, which sometimes cost probably more than $2.6 billion? dollars? So, with AI and data working together, we are seeing that timeline shrink dramatically, and the future of medicine looks faster, smarter than ever before. AI is not only crunching numbers, but also predicting the success of treatments in a way that's turning data into discoveries. And let's be honest, wouldn't it be nice if AI could speed up our doctor's appointments as fast as it can speed up the drug discovery? So, next we have a dynamic professional with 11 years of experience, including 3 years at Thoughtworks itself. Please join me in welcoming Divya, who has transitioned from a support engineer and developer to a highly skilled business analyst. Divya has worked across a wide range of industries, including media, retail, travel, finance, life sciences, and bringing a wealth of domain expertise. Her recent work focuses on data mesh implementation to accelerate preclinical drug discovery for a life sciences client, leveraging AI to enhance the data management process. Divya's expertise lies in domain agnostic delivery, digital transformation, and data mesh. Divya is also a recipient of ThoughtWorks Y Award for her integrity, courageous pursuit of excellence, and Divya continues to make a significant impact in the AI and data space. So let's welcome Divya as she shares her insights with us today to take us through the topic of data and AI synergy in drug discovery. And just before we get started with the talk, we will break for lunch after this talk. So, yeah, thank you so much. Over to you, Divya.
Thanks a lot for a notable introduction. And the title of this event, right, Converge, has never been better justified than the theme of the workshop that we've been having for the last couple of days. So, very great kudos to the team as well for bringing it all together, and thanks for the opportunity. So, we're going to speak about a bit of life science, a bit of data, AI, and how it's all going to get married together, right? And that's why convert, synergy, and everything. I guess the topic should tie it all. So, with that note, let me share my screen and start today's presentation. All right. So, what we're going to speak about is data and AI in the synergy in the drug discovery and life science spaces. So how can a drug discovery data and an AI that's applied on top of it helps accelerate your drug discovery, helps in processes of being able to crunch that million bucks worth data of sorts. So let's start getting into the specifics of it. So we'll cover a bit of a drug discovery 101, a bit of a life science background, and then we'll see what kind of data resides within such a domain, and then what all marvel can AI bring into it, and then we'll try and speak about how these three worlds can come together with a bit of a case study of my personal experience having worked in a project in ThoughtWorks in the recent past. So with that introduction, let me get into it, right? So what really happens when cells misbehave? Everybody, whoever misbehaves is like the creator of trouble, right? It's never a good outcome. It's never a great outcome. There might be some exceptions in this case, but misbehavior is never seen well, it's never treated well. And that's how our cells also are. So a healthy cell is something that just listens to the body. It just receives the food that's given it, absorbs all the nutrients given to it. It kind of eliminates the waste, metabolic waste that gets generated. It's very perfect in shape. It maintains its integrity. It kind of is very pleasant, pleasantly existing organism, right? The presently existing unit of our body, right? So that's what a healthy cell is all about. It also reflects very much in our persona, in the way we function on our daily life. And as opposed to this, much as opposed to this, an unhealthy cell is something that's very deep, deprived, and depressed. And it kind of is very reluctant in absorbing nutrients. It's not able to function well. It's not able to eliminate waste, and it's not able to function itself. It's very deformed in shape and things like that. So that's an indication to an onset of a disease. And that's where this entire field of drug discovery, life sciences, and clinical trials and commercialization of drugs, where your pharma industry takes care of it, and all that opens up. So it's opens up to a university of universal issues and the way to deal with it and things like that, right? So this is kind of where it all starts, of where your cells, if they start misbehaving, that's where your onset of a disease is said to happen, right? It could be from in a very small scale to something as huge as a cancer, which is being battled with by the entire universe. So the client who I was working for, and I am still working for, is a cancer therapy life science experts. So what they try to do is today's cancer treatment happens, although they try and give a drug that tries to treat a specific region of the cancer infected area, but the impact and the side effect of it is universal, right? What you see is, let's assume if there is a breast cancer, and then what you end up seeing is like hair loss, multiple symptoms, you end up throwing up continuously, you feel weak. So this the side effect of a specific drug is kind of seen throughout the body. So what my clients are, they are specialized in trying to treat the drug at a very targeted scale, and the impact also being at the targeted level. So that is where we step in and we try to bring in data and AI and all its magic, and try to see how we can make this better for the client to do a faster drug discovery process. So let's quickly jump into to see what kind of market we are speaking about, right? So for treating such disorders and diseases, the market that we are trying to see is a $1.5 trillion industry, and it's just growing, right? It keeps growing. And this is about, it takes about average of 10 years for bringing molecule to market, meaning 10 years from a lab to be able to be available on top of the shelf of a pharmacy. It takes about 10 to 15 years. And we all knew the importance of it during COVID as well, right? Where we struggled to just get a vaccine out there so it can just magically cure everyone's, viral infections and things like that. However, it was at a very, very tough situation where we had to fasten the discovery in a laboratory, fasten the discovery in an animal setup, and then try and do a clinical trial and goes on. So these are some of the phases that the drug discovery goes through and the drug development goes through, for which it almost takes 10 years. And at the 10 years, end of 10 years, what do you see? You see a less than 5% rate of success. So what you started off with, 10,000 candidates in the beginning, funnels down to even less than 2 candidates all the way until it comes out to the pharmaceutical industries. So this is exactly the cycle and the trivial extent to which this issue has to be addressed, right? You start with a big set of candidates, and then you take forever to get to a state where a drug can be effectively used, and the success rate of it is less than 5%. So you can see a huge potential and a huge favor to the humanity if you can try and help it, right? So this is just beyond the lens of seeing it as a potential, money market, over seeing it as how fast can we cure the diseases that springs up in humans, right? So that is how there is a moral aspect to it as well. So it takes about average of 10 years of bringing a molecule all the way to the market. It's definitely a $1.5 trillion industry. Only 10 to 20% of the drugs across the diseases ranges are successful in clinical trials. So these are the opportunities as well as the problem statements to which we are targeted towards, right? So with that note, let me go forward and try and tell you what really happens, right? We all are very easily, we can perceive things happening in the retail industry. We can perceive things happening in the finance industry. But what happens behind the walls of a laboratory, what happens really to bring that particular molecule all the way to the market, right? So what really is the journey like? So the journey is more about understanding the disease mechanism. Now, for us, understanding a disease mechanism could be as simple as you go take a blood test, you do ultrasound, and then you probably give a couple of other MRIs and things like that. So that's kind of at the top level. But what happens under the hood, right? We were trying to cure diseases at multiple molecular level, and we have reached to the extent of going beyond the cell, going beyond the gene in that cell, right? And inside the gene, you have like protein sequences. So you start looking into the protein and you start looking at what is wrong with that protein sequence. And then you try to treat that. And then it extrapolates into making everything else better for you. So as opposed to treating at a very high level, the life science domain of today, the scientific community has done marvelous breakthroughs to just go beyond that, level of perceivance that we see, like the perception that we see. We know about, at organ level, but they have gone even beyond the cell level. They've gone to a DNA, they've taken the gene out of it, they've gone to a protein, and they've started to extract understand its pattern, and then detect the issues, the proteins with issues, and then try to treat that. So that is exactly what targeted drug treatments are like. And here what happens is, in terms of understanding the disease mechanism, you try to identify the target which is heavily infected, and then you try to see what can be done to treat that particular gene that's infected, right? So that's what comes under understanding disease mechanism. Once you understand the target and the way it is infected, it's probably a little convenient for you to be able to discover a drug that addresses this problem. So that's what is followed by a drug discovery. So once you discover the drug, you also have the target. You have to start doing the experiments, and this is where the actual longer labs happen. You start treating this drug with the you start treating this target with the drug. You set the drug. You see how the drug attaches itself to the target. You see how the drug actually acts on the target. You see how efficient it is to solve that problem of that target. You also end up seeing, hey, while I treat this particular cell or a gene or a protein, is it not affecting the rest of the healthy ones around it, right? So that is how you start doing the preclinical studies. So preclinical majorly involves ones that you perform in a petri dish in a laboratory, all the way up to testing it on at certain animals, right? So rats and mice are the most perfect examples, very prevalent examples out there, because their lifespan is short. They have a very similar human anatomy as compared to other animals. They're also very easily, reproducible. The diseases that happen in humans are very easily recreatable in rats and mice as well. So those are like very potential candidates to test the effectiveness of a drug, right? So that is the one stage. And then you also test it on other animals, preferably depending on the type of the disease. All that happens in a preclinical study. So those are like categorized as in vitro and in vivo and all of that. In vitro is the lab petri dish level examinations, and in vivo is when you test it on animals. When it comes to clinical trial, it's when these tests barriers have passed, right? You see successful results in across all of these studies, and then you are like, okay, now this is probably worthy enough to be tested at humans, right? So that's when you have like clinical trial, and then it goes out to commercial. So once the clinical trial is successful, it's probably out there in the market, and for us to be able to get prescribed with, right? At each of these stages, you have like multiple abundance of data that's available, that's getting generated, to be able to give us a historical context of what is the success rate in each of it. Earlier, it was just a data storage. We used to like maintain it so that it becomes easy for everyone to access. We've also gone to the extent of, trying to make some data driven decisions and deriving insights out of it. But with the introduction of AI, it is doing wonders, and you will know that in a few moments from now. So in terms of data, for understanding a disease mechanism, your targets that you identify becomes a plethora of information, and you maintain that as data. For drug discovery, any variations of drug that you find out to be able to test against these targets, that becomes kind of your data set. Preclinical, like I said, the experiment observation. So whatever the results that get generated out of each of these tests becomes your data. When it comes to clinical, you try to test the effectiveness of it. You try to see what is the safety. You try to see what are the side effects. That kind of data also becomes available to us. And of course, when it goes to commercial, you keep continuously monitoring. You identify the value of the drug. You see how effective it is. And then you try to see if there are any additional variations that can be introduced, meaning on top of it, right? So these are some of the data sets that you can actually try and capture at the every stage in a drug discovery process. So with that being said, what could be the potential way to tap into this field and see and make the best use of it, as well as give the best results that it deserves, right? So that's what we are going to see. And one such approach is by treating data as a product. And that's where the synergy comes into place. So what you see here is is a diagram of sorts. It's a representation of how you can try and manage this data at different levels, how you can introduce this wand of AI, and then how you can start, experiencing the business outcomes. So I'd like to walk you through it from the bottom up, right? So first is the infrastructure that you provide to maintain its security, the identity verification, the observability aspects of it, the network aspects, the storage aspects, everything A to Z of infra is what you try and maintain at one level. On top of which lies your data as a product, right? So when I say data as a product, it definitely conforms to those data mesh principles of where every data can exist as a product and it can have a very beautiful relationship with each other defined really well, which can power through a lot of use cases. So that is how we see it. So in the previous example where I gave you in vitro and in vivo and then target identification, imagine each of this becoming a product. Imagine each of it sitting with its own realm of information, right? So for target, you might have this scientific community, a specific group that focuses on this. The gene itself is a list of genes is probably another information. How it is curated is another information. So imagine that you treat that as a separate product. And then you treat in vivo as a separate product. You treat the drug as a separate product. You treat the clinical result as a separate product. And they all coexist and stay in harmony with each other. They are well defined. They're well standardized. They make sure that a specific, let's say we have a drug. We use it at two different experiments. The drug that is used here will have a connectivity between both those experiments. So you have like a perfect harmony of all of this data maintained in this particular layer. And there's going to be like AI powered to make sure that this data is maintained in harmony. And I'll get to that in a minute by giving you a specific use case where we try to use AI to kind of make the best version of a data product. So I'll get to that in a minute. And on top of this lies a semantic and a graph-based insights, right? So like I mentioned, everything sits in harmony. But what do you do out of it, right? You just connect each of them. You understand the relationships. You define those relationships. And then you build knowledge graphs where the knowledge graph tries to tell you where is this effectively used, or, it gives you a historical information in a graph format. So that's where your other layer of semantic and graph-based insights comes into play. And then comes differentiated intelligence and then powered by AI ML models. And this is where the magic happens, right? You make predictions. So let's assume you make like 10, you have to go through 10 steps of an experiment or 10 experiments to be able to achieve a specific result. What you end up doing is you maintain this data so well and you feed it to a specialized AI model that gets trained with this data, where it's able to read through it and it is able to tell you that, hey, instead of step number 2 and 3, I think you can still skip 2 and 3 and still get to 4. It'll end up giving you the same effective result. Meaning what you do at step 2 and step 3 to get to step 4, this model will be able to predict and tell you how it can jump to 2 steps, or how it can be tweaked enough to be able to be time controlled, or how effectively this drug will function. It will be able to predict the effectiveness of a drug, to be able to take that as the top best candidate for you to perform that experiment. So there are such kind of things that are happening in the life science domain, in the drug discovery space, which helps you in accelerating. So imagine if you skip 2 steps and you still get the same outcome. It's going to reduce your drug discovery pipeline from 10 years to a very considerable small amount of time, right? So that's where this prediction is going to play and do wonders. And at this point, we are not jeopardizing any information. We are just using the historical data, the historical insights, and the intelligence to be able to make some informed decisions. So that's where this modeling space sits. And then comes the agents, which is like built on top of it, that helps you have this very simple natural language conversations with the researchers, for example. I'm going to take them as a persona here, right? So for their persona, they know about their experiments and they know about what results it generates. They might not know about the data that we maintain. They might not know about the schema information, the structure, the metadata information that we keep. So, and the best part about AI is it doesn't want the people to really know everything that is under the hood. It just works on top of it, right? So these AI agents are going to really blend in well with the data that we have curated, to be able to give answers to the researchers. So if researchers want to look at the data that we have maintained, all they have to ask is a natural level question, natural language question, and they'll be able to, respond by looking at the data that lies within. And this is what specialized training does to the data. So you feed this data to LLM models, the specialized models, and the model gets very well accustomed with it, and it starts responding to the queries. It start giving you a visualization of it. It gives you a graph representation of it and whatnot, right? Heat maps and things like that. So those are the kind of outcomes that you can have at the AI agents and intelligence apps layer. And it can also generate like a protocol for you to perform an experiment and whatnot. And having built this kind of a tower and a structure is what you get the business outcomes out of, right? You get very value based innovations, you get use case driven problem statements that get solved. Here this is a typical model of a drug, and this is called as an ADC, antibody drug conjugate, which is like a specific drug that gets attached to an antibody, which will help you take that drug all the way to the target gene or target protein and act on it, so that it's very localized and it is very specifically targeted towards a specific thing. So having maintained this data that I spoke about in all these layers, you will be able to effectively manage. So beyond data management, you're able to visualize it, you're able to derive insights out of it, you're able to make it more natural, you're able to predict the model. Using predictive models, you're able to predict the drug discovery stages and make it faster. So, I mean, the opportunities in this space is innumerable. And having said that, a bit of a background, right? I have had like this experience in a life science domain for the last 1 year. So if I am able, and I have not had like a biology background after my 10th standard. But so for people who think this is still a taboo of sorts in the industry, where life science is a very complex domain and it'll be very difficult for me to digest, I guess as consultants, this is where we come in. We try to understand what they want to do with such a data. They have that, and we want to understand how to effectively bring that data into a specific organized format and be able to deliver results to them. So the point being, even if you do not have like an exposure to life science domain, a few days of trying to understand the basics is all it takes for you to envision such a big dream, right? And be able to contribute to such a marvel. So that's where I'm trying to get to. But this particular, understanding of how you can marry data, AI with the life science information should be able to give you like extreme benefits. So having said this, I said I'm going to give you some use cases out of my work experience where we have applied AI to data and made sure that there are results. Two such slices out of this entire model, right? One is AI-powered data products. So I'm going to tell you how we leveraged AI to be able to bring in a better data, to be able to build a better data product. And I'm also give you an example of how we used AI to build an agent that helps in having conversations with the researchers. So I'll quickly move on to that. And then we'll probably revisit what the benefits, results, and all of that is like, right? So first is the data as a product. So for this, what we used to do is we fed this model with past decisions of multiple data products that we had initially onboarded. We used to give them column names of the raw data set that was maintained. We used to give them what this data is all about, the context. It was an in vivo experiment conducted in this lab at a certain temperature, bought from the drug was bought from a certain vendor. All of that gets fed into it, right? Apart from that, we also give some sample data to it. Now, with this, we give a very beautifully crafted prompt. And that's where like a lot of creativity and a lot of context gets fed into it, right? So what is the principles based of which this data is maintained? What should the output format look like? What are the guidelines that you're supposed to follow? Any regulatory, setup that you need? And then what is the expectation and all of that? So you try to feed all of this information to an LLM, and what it generates is amazing, right? It starts giving you column names, description, metadata information in a very structured format. When I say that, column names is something that scientists usually write at the back of a napkin, right? They just write abbreviations because they are very well trained and educated to be able to recognize it. But how will we start making it more digestible, right? So this AI model will actually look at all of the life science literature. It looks at all of these, other textual information that's out there. Plus, it tries to marry your data, and it tries to give you a very niche or very curated column name, description, and the metadata. So this kind of output what benefit has it given, right? It has given us about 80% reduction in the lead time. So if a data to be able to get converted from a raw data to a curated data, let's say it takes about 3 weeks. Okay. This model, excuse me, it tries to make it even faster because it already gives you a recommendation. All they have to do is now the subject matter experts should go and pick the right ones that fits most for the data product. And then we onboard the data product. So from 4 weeks of effort, it has been able to reduce it to almost one or even a few days, right? That's the thing. And the load that we put on the subject matter experts here are also lesser by time, because not a lot of us are accomplished with life science information. We used to heavily rely on the subject matter experts and the researchers of the domain to be able to give us meaning for every word that is getting generated out there. So this model helped us to digest that information better. So whereas they had to spend very little time to actually help us explain what this is all about, because the model did it all, right? Apart from that, it also gave a more consistent data quality. When I say that, it means I spoke about earlier, right? There are two data sets. They have to live in harmony. So let's say there was a specific column used in a specific data set. There's a drug name or something. And then the drug name will slightly be written differently by the researcher here, because they are very used to typing the information on hand, right? So something as basic as a hyphen and an underscore, that created huge gaps in making this data sit well with each other. So because of this generator, we started curating more harmonized data, and we made sure that they exist very well with each other. So those were some of the benefits right out of the bat. So that's kind of one use case of where this data as a product really got accelerated. You can start building more products in a time. You can start creating that mesh out of it and make it work in very less time. And one of the data AI-based accelerator really helped us get there, right? So that's one use case. The other use case is about research assistant. So it's a chat-based interface. We kind of, in a physical world, like you have like 10 agents to do one work for you. Yeah, they go talk to different things and they try to bring and collate the data together. They utilize AI models. So it's a very simple way of representing how a research assistant could work. So you have data that sits underneath. You have the specialized models that are built on top of it. And then you build these niche agents, right, to speak to these data through the models, and they're able to give the responses on time. So that's what these agent architecture does. And it's able to very nicely interact with the specialized AI models and fair data and be able to give responses to the researchers in a very natural way possible. And beyond just giving responses, they're also able to generate visualizations where they're able to see a pattern of a drug discovery evolution as well. So this has proved like really worthy in, and we've received really good accolades from our clients, where we were initially not able to, help them understand the importance of maintaining this data in a mesh concept. And there was a tough decision of being able to have them adopt to it. A lot of them are not skilled with, interacting with a database, querying and things like that. That's not their core skill set, right? And that's not their core KPIs as well. They are not expected to, sit and write SQLs to crunch the data. They are expected to perform experiments, get the results out. So what makes it easy for them to access this sort of a well-managed data was the research assistant. And it kind of has like a huge impact at the clients today. And it's being spoken of in multiple forums by the client themselves. They are taking this as the most important, valuable asset to the conferences, and they're presenting how it is really effective for them. So that's kind of the success metric for us as well, to know that this agent really works. Agent driven framework really works. And by giving specific agent driven boundaries, you're able to get a better result. So that's the kind of this has been experimented with, and then these are the kind of classifications that make sense to give you a very specific answer that's expected by the researchers. So this model also has been proven to be very effective when it comes to managing the data and applying AI on top of it to help researchers get some insights into our data. So having said that, I'll take a quick time check as well. Are we good on time, hosts?
So
Okay,
we wanted to end this by 2:10,
sure.
including the
Okay,
Q&A.
okay,
You
sure. I
have
think
that
we are,
much of time.
okay, thank you. All right. So having said that, let me quickly take you back to the phase where I just quickly give you the benefits and results of this whole model, right? What happens is this will help you in improved efficiency in target identification. So because you build a model, so the predictive models will help you identify that target gene very easily. It will help you identify the drug that can be treated very easily. It will reduce the time, like I already explained it to you, right? And it'll also enhance the collaboration. So you maintain this data in a product setup in a very cohesive manner, and then it helps you in very easy collaboration with external artifacts as well at some point in time, right? You have a lot of this textual science papers written by folks. There's a lot of published materials. There's a lot of research materials. There are also a lot of research data that's been open sourced and released in public. So by bringing all of this together, right, you can make enhanced data-driven decisions. So that's some of the high-level benefits of it. And the future possibilities, like I already spoke, is innumerable. And one thing that was highlighted in the monologue for this talk, right, is a personalized medicine. So what if medicine is curated for very specific disease of your body type, of your nature of responses, of your side effects? And that's not even far away now, given that you're able to make, build this sort of a structure and leverage AI on top of it. Your personalized medicine is not really far away. And that's kind of a promised statements, value statements that we are seeing across the industry. And like I said, targeted therapies. Very simple example is the cancer. Today's cancer therapies are actually acting all over your body. You're having like side effects all over. But these targeted therapies have actually proven to be very localized, and the impact is very local. That way, the success ratio is also better. The impact is local, and the patient is also seeing a longer longevities, even in case of like stage 4 cancers. It has elongated their longevity and also be given them the strength to kind of tolerate the disease, right? So that's kind of a dream come true of sorts for unfortunate situations as well. So also this integration with emerging tech. So being able to maintain this data this way, being able to sensibly apply this integration, you're going to make it very easy for the emerging tech to just act upon it. So that's another benefit that you get, and discovering novel drug targets and mechanisms. So the way to find out which target is better is also going to get better by this, right? So I hope that's more digestible given the background that I have provided about life science. Moving further, and the last section of today's call is challenges and consideration. So yes, there is innumerable possibilities. There is a large potential. There's large data set. What all can it happen? What do you have to keep in mind to really consider, right? Data quality and standardization, top of the layer. You have to be able to maintain a good data to be able to give you accurate results. Because whenever we take other problem statements in the world, we are like, hey, this is not a matter of life and death. So a small mistake, although it causes huge impact in other ways, is still correctable. But when it comes to life matter, everyone becomes very cautious, right? And that caution we have to exercise even if we are not directly related to the one that gets impacted. And that's kind of the considerations and challenges that you're supposed to keep in mind when you do it. So when you do a data quality, you need to make sure that the data is very qualitative. The data is standardized and maintained properly. The labels are proper. The tags that you give to a specific data is proper. The discoverability is, giving you the right set of information. All this needs to be validated with multiple levels of human in the loop, at least for you to curate and get it to a certain stage. Of course, please bear in mind that you also have to have ethical considerations, right? You might have like a lot of clinically stated regulations that you need to maintain. So you need to kind of make sure that you are conforming to ethical standards. You don't break the line, you don't break the rule, and then you go forward and just go exploratory. you have to you have to ensure that you're having those ethical considerations, and you're respectful to the data privacy rules that are being set out. And of course, the interpretability of AI, which is always the question, but we have to kind of make sure that it happens in a regulatory context, which is why you would have heard me say specialized models all along the way. Make sure that your LLM models are very specialized, they're very fine tuned with the data that is existing within the purview of the organization. Make sure that you validate it numerous times to be able to give that expected result. And of course, because this is life science and the impact is really huge, it always helps to validate the results before having to test it out. So these are, having said with these of some of these rules and regulations, I hope you're able to take like responsible steps towards curating a better world for the humans around you and for the scientific community who really deserves this sort of a setup to be able to help them accelerate. So yeah, there ends my talk. Thank you so much for the opportunity.